Hey everyone, and welcome to the Human Design Podcast with me, your host, Emma Dunwoody. I'm a qualified master coach and human behaviour specialist, as well as being a qualified human design coach. And I work with clients every single day to answer the big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And what is my purpose? I also assist them to transition from the person they think they should be to the person they really are on the inside. I teach people how to actually live their design instead of just knowing it. And if this is something that you want to do too, well, stay tuned or reach out for private coaching or Human Design Unpacks, where I show you exactly how to live your design. Hey everyone, I wanted to jump in really briefly before we dive into this episode to talk to you about my dear friend and episode sponsor, the incredible Jess Bubbico. This absolutely one of a kind manifestor completely changed my life from the moment I met her. Like, talk about initiating people into who they came here to be, far out. So when I first came across Jess, I was convinced that I had no access to my intuition. In fact, I remember pleading with her to tell me how I could connect to it, because according to my human design and my astrology and anything else that I was diving into, I was meant to be this hugely intuitive human. And as far as I could tell, inverted commas, I wasn't. So I joined one of her programs at the time and absolutely transformed my intuition. Not only did I discover that I'm hugely intuitive, but I also managed to access a lot of the gifts that I didn't even realize I was already plugged into. Things like cold reading people, being given a name and being able to tell you all of these really intimate details about this person that I'd never met. In fact, this particular person that I did this cold read for after Jess had taught me what to do, I received an amazing message because it was the best reading she'd ever had, like, wow, blows my mind, right? Throughout this program, I learned to see and connect with people who had passed over. I connected with people's angels, their guides. I was able to give really powerful insights and guidance to clients. And I still do to this day. In fact, it's built my confidence in my gifts, that I can trust these things that just drop in, or just a knowing or a vision that I see. So the other part that Jess has just really amplified into is really being able to guide clients through her Soulpreneur Activation Sessions to get massive clarity around authenticity and business, okay? And through this process, Jess uses obviously human design and the gene keys to help you really tap into your intuition. Now, as I'm going down the gene keys rabbit hole at the moment, I thought it would be amazing if she could just give me her insights, take me through my pearl sequence, because this is all about purpose and abundance, which is one of the areas of my life where I feel like I'm doing well, but I want to amplify it. I really want to find out my uniqueness within this place. And I'd been learning my pearl sequence. So I check in with Jess and I said, look, could you just do my pearl sequence for me? Because I'd love to see your insights. And wow, it was an absolute game changer. It was so powerful, even though I'd been studying these things, to really hear her insights. And I really believe that that's got a lot to do with, being that manifestor that initiates us into our purpose, into our authenticity. So if any of this sounds awesome to you, please go check out the show notes, dive into her website, book a session with her, like either a Soulpreneur Activation Session or an intuitive guidance session. And I think if you're super quick, you might even make it into one of her programs she's got open at the moment, which is I think a mastermind type program. So yeah, enjoy the rest of the episode. Bye for now. Hey, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. Today, we have the next in the series of centers, and we're going to be chatting to the amazing Marcie. Marcie, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Marcie sat on on the HDX panel for the Will Center, so it's going to be super exciting to talk to her. Obviously, I am defined in the Will Center, and Marcie is undefined. Now, remembering as we head into this episode, just remembering that wherever we're undefined, this is a place where we need to build our trust in the universe because we have a inconsistent energy there. And then where we're defined, it's about building our trust in ourselves because we have our consistent energy there. So the will center is a place we talk a lot about. Our willpower sits there. It's also called the heart center or the ego center. The ego center, I always like to refer to this energy as it's kind of like a resourceful ego. What it just means is that it is focused on the material plane, whether that's creating something or building resources. I know I have the 40-37, so I like to be able to provide. I like to earn money to provide for my family, for the tribe. I like to provide for my community. So it is this energy that it is often very rooted in the material plane, about creation in the material plane. It's also an energy that we talk about willpower. So there's this willpower energy that sits in here. And it's one of the four motors that actually has this inconsistent energy. It just means that the will center it's a bank. Okay. It's like a savings account. When you're rested and recovered and restored, then you have this energy to push through. The will center will literally drive people to, I'll often call myself like a dog with a bone. I can be very determined, very relentless. And that's my willpower energy. As long as I've invested in taking care of my physical body and resting, then I will have this energy to continue to push through. It's also called the heart center because it's where the G center and this little will or this heart center broke out. So there's also a lot of heart-spaced energy in here, which is we talk about self-worth sits in the will center as well. So that's actually what I would probably going to focus mostly on today, because I feel like so many people in today's society really wrestle with self-worth. And what we discovered on the panel was it wasn't like the undefined will centers had low self-worth and the defined will centers had high self-worth. It didn't work that way. We all had a journey with low self-worth. It was just we experienced it a little bit differently. So to kick off, Marcie, would you consider yourself like a willful or determined type person?
Yeah, with this question, I was struggling with that because I think I'm both. Because there's times where I say, I'm going to change up my diet, cold turkey, change to paleo, do it, struggle through it, don't plan ahead, just do it, and then stay on it. And then there's times where, in terms of goal setting, it's like, I don't really love to set goals, but I love to achieve goals. And so I feel like there's a little bit of both in there for me. And I'm assuming that's, I don't know if that's normal or not, but I feel like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's super normal. One of the things, even with having a defined will center, I remember learning this. Like one of the things that I read really early on was a defined will center likes to set and achieve goals, and I was like, oh God, that's not me. Like, I don't feel that way. I think a lot of that was me talking from my conditioning. I do definitely like to achieve my goals. However, there's a really, really powerful distinction. I think with the undefined, as long as you're setting, and this is with anyone really, as long as you're setting inverted commas goals that are aligned through your strategy and authority, then we all have that opportunity to feel really lit up and excited, or want to set and achieve goals. And the same actually goes for a defined will center. So one of the things I thought that meant was that I could just set a goal and then just force myself to get there. But actually, I remember really early on in my journey having, posing that question to my mentor, and she was like, no, not at all. Yes, you'll have the determination to keep turning up and keep, heading towards where you want to go. But if you try and set yourself a goal that's out of alignment with you, then you're just going to have, just as little success as whether you're defined or undefined. So I think the biggest piece when it comes to goal setting per se is that the undefined center just isn't going to have the consistent energy to keep turning up, especially if you're trying to set yourself goals that aren't aligned to you. If you set yourself goals that are aligned to you, that your strategy and authority have guided you to, then what I would imagine is going to happen is that the universe is going to bring the people and the opportunities and the situations and the transits and whatever you need so that you can then achieve that goal. With a defined will center, same deal. You've set yourself a goal via your strategy and authority. It feels really good. It means that you probably have more of your own energy just to keep turning up until you get to that point. Does that resonate with you, Marcie?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, I want to say that I'm a recovering MG with an undefined will center. And it was through this process of human design to help kind of put together the pieces that have kind of occurred for me in the last 10 years. But I think that I have definitely experienced a time where I put a lot of energy out and responded to the opportunities that came my way. And I think like a lot of them lit me up, but didn't really have the discernment I think there's a lot of I should do these things. I should respond and do these things.
Yeah.
And balanced with some lighting up of getting excited for them. But that completely like burned me out. I had no idea about my energy resource and needing to build it up. And like it was a 4 to 5 year run and ended up with health issues. And that's when I was like, oh gosh, like I'm doing way too much here. But I liked it. They were cool tasks, and it was getting me along a path that I thought I was on or wanted to be on. But I don't think I really got alignment or understood or got that path clear so I could discern like what's right for me and what's not right for me.
Yeah.
So in the end, I ended up, burning out. And I see this a lot with other women, and I think another reason for that is, so I look at like, why did I feel like I had to keep turning up and doing the shoulds? And this kind of gets to the self-worth. It was like I had something to prove. And I always thought like I was grateful for these opportunities to come to me, and they're exciting. And this is kind of my identity. I'm a yes person. People rely on me. I'll do it and do it well. And then, but part of me was like, I don't want to disappoint anyone. I don't want to drop a ball. I don't want to, be thought of anything less. And that I think is problematic too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you've nailed it. This is a large part of that undefined will center that says, I need to prove myself. I need to, that feeling that feels like an inconsistent self-worth, or that your self-worth is somehow judged externally of you, and then plays out in this, I now need to prove myself kind of behavior. I feel like this is really, really, really common. And given that like only 15% of the global population are defined in the will center, according to the original knowledge, I reckon that's out. Because I mean, unless I just attract all the defined will centers, but there's a large majority of the population that are undefined. And I think it's really interesting that you've just touched on that, that need to prove yourself, like being a yes person, feeling like, yep, I'm lit up about it. But am I really? It's more about this, I need to prove myself. I need to keep up. I need to, show people what I'm capable of or who I am. And doing that in a way that you're trying to achieve, self-worth, like this internal value. But of course, what we're doing is we're actually getting more external validation. Everyone else is judging our worth for us, dependent on the work that we do. So our doing, not our being. And at the end of the day, our self-worth comes from who we are on the inside, from our heart. Like, because we're breathing, we are worthy. That's it. And I think what's really interesting from a defined will center point of view is that I don't necessarily feel that, I've never felt I need to prove myself per se. I suppose the unresourceful part of a will center is that if I go into my shadow, I feel like my shadow will go to like competition, and not in a, like I've done a lot of competition per se in my life in a really resourceful way in sport, like I wasn't ever competing against anyone else. It was always about me and doing better. But I know that my shadow will definitely, if I go into those lower expressions, my will center will definitely be like, you need to do better than this, or that person's doing better than you. And so it's not so much proving myself, but all of a sudden I can feel my ego competing. And that's when I know that I'm out of alignment with my will center. Because there is no competition, right?
Yep. Yeah. No, I have the same. I feel like I never was really in competition with other people. It was myself. I'm this like I'm a continuously improvement minded person. And part of it is like just challenging yourself to see where your limit is. Like that's kind of exciting to me in a way. But also same as you in terms of what you were just saying. And I lost my train of thought. But anyway,
right.
I resonate exactly with what you're saying, even though I have the undefined will center.
Yeah.
So.
And I think, I suppose, also picking up on, we live in a world that we're moving away from this old paradigm now that is very competition focused. So oftentimes between, my will center being defined, it can also be potentially my undefined head and ajna, because we're living in a world that is focused on competition and that sort of thing. Beautifully in the sort of the category, I'm going to say, the area that we work in or that I work in, I feel like that competition piece is really starting to fall away. We are all really starting to value each other, and women are, no longer competing with each other. That story, that old story, is really starting to shift and change, which I think is so beautiful and powerful to see. But let's talk about self-worth. It's funny because when we were talking about this on the panel, all of the defined will centers, we were always all the same, like, oh yeah, no, I've definitely had my own journey with self-worth. But one of the things, the distinctions that I thought was really powerful was as kids, when I was little, and the other defined will centers, we were we had this conversation about how we were aware of the self-worth of our parent or parents. And we were kind of like, oh, I'm not going to be that. So we actually could see how our self-worth story and identity started to be built despite what we saw with our parents. But the thing that I thought was fascinating with and again, no surprise, but just beautiful to see how our human design works, is that the undefined will centers literally picked up the self-worth of their primary carer. And that was more the journey that the undefined will center was having. Did you had that experience?
Yeah, definitely. And I probably didn't realize it until like in the last year or two, really, maybe even the last year. But no, I take that back. I've noticed it before, but in the context of human design and how it's affecting me and my self-worth and the way I challenge myself in talking about the undefined will center and how it's defined, et cetera, or how we talk about it. But yeah, my mom doesn't have a lot of self-worth. She doesn't think she's smart, and she has a story that is behind that. And I've had to tell her before, I had to say to her, you're smarter than you think, and Google is your best friend. So there's resources out there for you to answer these questions. But it still is prevailing with her. And I've realized like that's probably why I have struggled in this area in terms of I never learned it. And there's parts of her that have a lot of confidence in who she is and what she does. But when it comes down to certain things, it's not. So, and I think we also talked about on the panel, like self-worth can be kind of maybe observed in different ways. I never was like someone that I say that I might be lacking or unaware of my self-worth, but not to a point where it was destructive or, and neither was my mom either in terms of addiction or finding other ways to kind of handle whatever people do, in terms of low self-worth. But I feel like it's a functional way that I've like gotten through life to this point, and I've achieved things. And so that's why people see me, or when I kind of let on to like, I'm not so sure about this, I'm not feeling strong. And they're like, wait, what? Like, I don't understand that. You're this leader person, you do all these things. And I'm like, no, this is a real thing I struggle with.
Yeah. And I think that's so common, like it's that difference between people see from the outside someone who seems confident and capable and competent, and it's what's firing that, it's what's driving that on the inside that we don't see, like from your point of view, what's driving it is this, like, I've got to prove myself, I've got to, do the best I can do here. I've got to continue to grow and lead and do all of these things. And I think this is what the beauty of human design gives us, is that we can start to do these things, because the reality is you've achieved so much in your life, a lot of good things, but we want you to do it from a place of where you don't burn out. And I think oftentimes when we're coming from an unresourceful place, or whether it's low self-worth or whatever it is, this is when we burn ourselves out, because we're not in contact with our own innate body wisdom that says, okay, you need a breather here, or you're pushing yourself too hard there. And I think this is the big thing that we can get, is like, in many cases, our shadow or our conditioning or our low self-worth has driven us to achieve great things. It's just that when we come from this place, we're going to burn out. And we want to ask ourselves a better question. And the question is, how can I achieve all the things I want to achieve, or be the human I want to be, or have the impact I want to have, and enjoy myself on the way? And I think this is the big thing about human design. And that's what human design gives us, is that opportunity to just flip that switch and be like, okay, now I can listen to me. I can trust me. I can, I love me the way I am. And these things that I thought were not my superpowers, or something that was wrong with me, is actually something that's really going to help me to have a massive impact, which is really beautiful. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I you're talking about what drives us, and one of the things for me is like helping people solve problems, but like that comes at a cost of not helping myself. And so I would, go to all costs to make sure everyone's taken care of, and then in the end, I'm just kind of like left on the weekends to build up whatever energy I can in those 2 days between the work weeks. And I feel like in the last couple of years, I definitely have, I mean, after the kind of the health diagnosis, I was like, okay, it's time to take care of yourself. This is a problem that only you can solve. And so, you got to find a way to be able to do what you like in terms of helping people, but also have put you first. And that was challenging and hard, because it's kind of a identity shift. I was like, is anyone going to notice that I'm like kind of loosening the reins, or I'm not saying yes to everything? And, I'm still working through that, but it definitely feels better. I'm paying attention to myself more and how I feel physically or emotionally. And to be honest, it's not that comfortable either, because I've been kind of ignoring it for a while. So it's all good, but it's just kind of building that muscle again in terms of how you're feeling, how you're feeling, and how you're trusting yourself.
Yeah. And I love that. I think this is so also aligned to the will center, like one of the, from a defined, and remember that we are always, your will center, whether it's undefined, if it's undefined, it will be switched on and off, whether it's through the people who come into your aura or the transits. And I think with the will center, to understand, like, I want lives in here. So many women that I've worked with that have defined will centers, they are so afraid to say what they want or ask for what they want, even though when they were little kids, they knew exactly what they wanted. It's just, it wasn't okay to want things. And I definitely believe that part of this whole journey, whether we're defined or we're undefined, is really learning to step into saying, I want this. I was raised by, a mother that was very much like, what do you need? What do you need? You can have what you need, but not what you want. And what you want was like this extra fluffy thing that other people got, but I didn't. And I think this is where we're definitely at this place where we're starting to build this muscle, because our wants are our needs. It's instead of running ourselves on the bare minimum, it's starting to actually say, well, I want to only work this amount of hours, or I want to have time out to have fun or to play, or I want to feel more valued in my relationship, or whatever it is. And building that muscle to start to ask for what we want, that's a journey, but it's a really important journey, I believe.
Absolutely. And it's I'll say that it's I've been practicing it a bit, but it's also like it takes some effort to like get clear on like, what is it I want? Because I've known throughout my life, like I want this, but it's never taken the front seat, I think, in a lot of situations. And so to kind of really pay attention to that and be like, oh, I actually have an opportunity to say to myself what I want, and then say to others what I want, and see what happens from there,
Yeah, I love what
Yeah.
you said, because I feel like we there isn't a lot of clarity around it. It's not a muscle that people have built. And oftentimes, because of the negativity bias, we're constantly focused on what we don't want,
Yeah.
So we just need to start to build that muscle and say, okay, well, if I don't want that, then what do I want? And just go through that process, start to build the muscle, allow ourselves to want things, and then change our mind. That's the other part of it. With the will center itself, as I say, it's really existent on the material plane. This is something that is about creating, about wanting and bringing those things into our material existence. So it's okay to want those things and then change our mind, or decide, actually, that's not quite it, like that I always remember very early on in my human design journey of that. You don't have to put up with a 70% yes, like you can have the whole 100%. So trusting that we can just build this muscle and start to be like, okay, we're allowed to want what we want. We definitely are on this journey to build our self-worth. And also, like, what does self-worth mean to us? Because for me, with a defined will center, one of the things that I've always found really curious, because I look back through my journey with depression and panic disorder, through this frame of, well, I've consistent self-worth. How does that work? And when I was really at my lowest point, I still valued me. Like I still valued myself, which is kind of crazy to think. So I feel like it's this real feeling that's consistently like valuing yourself on a really deep level. However, the mind can massively override it. So I would imagine that feeling, for an undefined will center, it's like sometimes it's just not there, just that feeling of really valuing yourself is just not there. So it's a journey to build that muscle so that you literally have reconditioned your brain to be able to access your self-worth, whether it's through the mind, through, just knowing that you're really worthy in a relationship or whatever it is, like building that reconditioning within your body so that you can access it that way. Does that resonate? Am I making sense?
It does. And I too agree that I think that there's always been an underlying thing, knowing my self-worth. But I think for me, it's if you call it exercising or living into it, or really, making sure that I'm sticking up for myself, in lots of different types of situations. And a lot of those situations, I was like, it's probably a path of least resistance. We'll just go with what that person wants or needs, and I can hang, you know. But yeah, I feel like it's really recognizing, you know, recognizing what your self-worth is and what you want, and then moving on it or acting on it or holding it true for yourself so that it's more lived out rather than just like a knowing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. I love that. Like holding it true for yourself so it's lived out. I really like that. I think that's incredibly powerful, because sometimes I'm just thinking about myself. So one of my sons also has a defined will center. And if I just think about it in the frame of our family, like we get what we want, like the two of us get what we want. And then the other two will just work with us, you know, like they will just, they get what they want, don't get me wrong, but there is definitely, there's this different energy about it, you know, whereas if Oscar and I come together and if I want things to be this way and he wants things to be this way, it can be a real standoff. Whereas there's this beautiful energy with the four of us where, you know, we want what we want, but this becomes this beautiful dance because the will centers like Coop and Justin don't have a defined will center. So I think that there's a lot to be said for both of them, and the way we navigate our self-worth is so unique to ourselves. Like we have these beautiful big structures like human design and even all the mindset work and really investing in meditation and you know, heart-brain coherence and all of these things that really connect us to our self-worth. But at the end of the day, you know, we need to be consciously in touch with it all the time and just taking its temperature and taking care of ourselves so that we do feel connected, whether we're defined or undefined. Resonate?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. There's something I was telling you earlier that I was listening to your podcast this morning on a walk, and I haven't been on a walk in a long time and done body movement. And part of that is like confidence building, and which also kind of plays into self-worth too. So like it's kind of like if you're feeling confident, your self-worth rating is probably higher than today if you're feeling confident versus yesterday or whatever. And it kind of dawned on me the last couple of weeks, like I've kind of fallen off the wagon on certain things that I do that are building the confidence, but just good for me, and can, you know, those activities that connect you and kind of get you out of your head. And I feel like, okay, just prove to myself, like, these are the things that I need to put in place so that I can feel stronger in who I am in terms of, and what I want, and asking it and living it out and moving it out. So yeah, I think that's something to, in terms of these tools and things to kind of build up your self-worth when you have an undefined will center. And
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining. I feel like that's an important point that we can end on. So thanks for being here, Marcie.
Thank you. Pleasure's all mine. And I appreciate all your podcasts. As I mentioned, I listened to a couple this morning, and so this is great. So I had a lot of fun, and it's great to always talk with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You too. And thank you everyone for being here. I trust that this has been a helpful podcast for you to get to know your will center a little bit and the journey to greater self-worth. So thanks everyone for joining. Bye for now. Thanks everyone for being here all the way to the end of the podcast. I hope you got lots of value out of it. I certainly had a lot of fun doing it. Could I please ask that you share this podcast with friends if you found it valuable? And also, bonus points, could you leave a review for me as well on Apple? It would be greatly appreciated. If at any point you would like to be on the podcast, or you've got questions that you'd like me to discuss on the podcast, by all means, get on my socials and DM me. Everything you need is there in the show notes. Have an awesome day. Bye for now.